I'd spent 3 years sacrificing everything for a promotion, and I finally got it. But my father's text, "Lucky break, kiddo," turned my greatest triumph into a battle I never saw coming. The email arrived at 4:52 p.m. on a Friday. My heart was already jackhammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat that had been my constant companion for the past week. My screen shimmered, the light catching the film of sweat on my forehead. The subject line was simple, terrifyingly so. An update regarding the senior project lead position. My mouse hovered over it, my hand shaking so badly that the little white arrow danced a jig around the hyperlink. I closed my eyes, took a breath that tasted like stale office air and desperation, and I clicked. For a moment, I didn't understand the words. My brain refused to process them, but then they snapped into focus, a constellation of letters forming the single most beautiful sentence I had ever read. "Congratulations, we are pleased to offer you the position." I didn't even finish it. A sound escaped my throat, a choked-off sob of pure, unadulterated relief. I had done it. After 3 years of grinding, of late nights fueled by lukewarm coffee and the dregs of my ambition, of weekends spent staring at spreadsheets until my vision blurred, I had finally done it. This wasn't just a promotion, it was validation. It was proof that I wasn't invisible, that my work mattered. My first instinct, the one ingrained in me since childhood, was to share the news with my parents. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers still trembling. I quickly typed out a message to our family group chat, a picture of the confirmation email attached. "I got it! I actually got the promotion. I'm officially the new senior project lead." I hit send, a giddy, foolish smile plastered on my face. I imagined my mom's excited call, my dad's proud, booming voice. For a fleeting, beautiful moment, I let myself believe this time would be different. The first reply came from my mom almost instantly, a single thumbs-up emoji. That was it. My smile faltered. A minute later, my dad's message appeared. "Good for you." Not "congratulations," not "we're so proud," just "good for you." It felt like a pat on the head you'd give a dog for a simple trick. The giddiness in my chest began to curdle, replaced by a familiar, hollow ache. I knew what was coming next. I knew it as surely as I knew my own name. I just prayed I was wrong. And then, the final message landed, a text sent to me privately, not in the group chat. It was from my dad. 3 words that shattered the last remaining shard of my joy. "Lucky break, kiddo." Lucky. The word echoed in the sudden silence of my cubicle. It ricocheted off the walls of my skull, each bounce a fresh stab of pain. Lucky. As if the 60-hour weeks I'd pulled for the last 6 months were a lottery ticket. As if the project I'd single-handedly salvaged from the brink of collapse, the one that directly led to this promotion, was just a roll of the dice. As if my entire career, my entire life, was a series of fortunate accidents rather than a mountain I had been climbing with bleeding hands. The truth is, this wasn't about luck. It was about my brother, Liam, my charming, brilliant, effortlessly successful brother, the golden child. Liam, who had started at the same company a year after I did, and who, in the eyes of my parents, had already lapped me twice. He was a natural, they'd say. Things just came easily to Liam, while I was the grinder, the plodder, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. They never said it to be cruel. In their minds, it was just a statement of fact, like saying the sky is blue. And the unspoken, brutal reality of this promotion? The other final candidate for the senior project lead position had been Liam. We both knew it. We'd been neck and neck for weeks, our names constantly mentioned in the same breath. It had made family dinners excruciatingly tense, my parents asking Liam about his innovative strategies while asking me if I was keeping up. The promotion wasn't just a win for me. It was the first time in my entire life I had professionally, unequivocally, beaten my brother, and my parents' response was to call it luck. The weekend was a blur of forced smiles and quiet misery. Liam called me, and to his credit, he sounded genuinely thrilled for me. "Chloe, that's amazing," he'd boomed over the phone. "No one deserves it more. Seriously, you've worked your tail off." His support felt like a strange, bitter comfort. He saw the work. He acknowledged it. Why couldn't they? Did they think he'd let me win? That he'd thrown the match out of pity? The thought was mortifying. When I walked into the office on Monday morning, the atmosphere was different. The congratulations I received felt strained. People would smile, say, "Well done," but their eyes would flicker over my shoulder, as if searching for Liam. I saw the whispers in the break room, the huddled conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached. The narrative had already been written, and I wasn't the author. I was the beneficiary of some behind-the-scenes family arrangement, the lucky one. By Wednesday, I was living on a knife's edge of anxiety. The joy of my achievement had been so thoroughly poisoned that I could barely look at my new business cards without feeling a wave of nausea. That's when the email from HR landed in my inbox. It wasn't from the usual benefits coordinator. It was from Sarah Chen, the director of human resources, a woman I'd only ever seen in company-wide town halls. The subject line made my blood run cold. Confidential, follow-up regarding senior project lead selection. My hands turned to ice. This was it. Someone had complained. Someone had formally questioned my promotion. Maybe one of Liam's supporters. Or worse, maybe my parents had said something to a family friend who also worked here. Something about how I'd gotten a lucky break. And the rumor had festered and spread until it landed on HR's desk. I opened the email. It was short, professional, and utterly terrifying. Dear Chloe, in light of some internal queries and our commitment to full transparency in our promotion process, I would like to schedule a brief meeting with you to review the final selection data. This is a standard procedure in certain circumstances to ensure all parties are confident in the outcome. Please come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Your direct manager, Ms. Albright, has been invited. For the sake of complete clarity and to address the situation comprehensively, your brother, Liam, has also been asked to attend. I spent the next 18 hours in a state of suspended terror. Sleep was a foreign country I couldn't get a visa for. I just lay in bed, staring at the shifting shadows on my ceiling, replaying my father's text message. "Lucky break, kiddo." Was it a simple, thoughtless comment? Or was it a clue? A warning? Had he been talking to people at the company? My dad was a well-respected figure in a related industry. He had connections everywhere. The thought that he might have used his influence, either to help me or inadvertently sabotage me, made acid churn in my stomach. Liam called around 9 that night. His voice was laced with a weary frustration I knew well. "Chloe, this is insane," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "I told my manager this was ridiculous. It's just corporate nonsense. They have to tick their boxes. Don't let it get to you." "Easy for you to say, Liam," I snapped, the words sharper than I intended. "It's not your promotion on the line. It's not your name being dragged through the mud." There was a pause on the other end. "Hey," he said, his voice softer now. "It's my name, too. I'm the one who lost. What if anyone thinks it's shady? It reflects on both of us. But I know you earned this. I was in the trenches with you. I saw the work you put in on the Q3 project. I told them that." "You told who that?" I asked, my blood running cold again. "Sarah and Ms. Albright. I sent them an email as soon as I got the meeting invite. I told them you were the best candidate, full stop, and that this whole review is a waste of everyone's time." His support, so direct and unwavering, should have been a comfort. Instead, it just made me feel worse. It made him sound noble, like he was defending his poor, lucky little sister. It was exactly the kind of thing our parents would praise him for, the golden child, gracious even in defeat. The walk to Sarah Chen's office the next morning felt like a mile-long march to my own execution. The open-plan office, usually a buzzing hive of keyboards and quiet chatter, seemed to fall silent as I passed. Every head that turned, every pair of eyes that flickered in my direction, felt like an accusation. I was a ghost haunting my own body, my skin cold and clammy, my steps robotic. Sarah's office was on the executive floor. It was a glass box, sterile and modern, with a single orchid on a stark white desk. She was already there, a picture of calm professionalism in a navy blue suit. My manager, Ms. Albright, sat to her right, offering me a tight, sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Liam was on the other side of the large conference table, looking grim. He met my gaze and gave a slight, encouraging nod. I sat down opposite them, the leather of the chair cool against my trembling legs, and placed my hands on the table to stop them from shaking. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice even and measured. "I want to be clear that the purpose of this meeting is not to relitigate the selection for the senior project lead position. The decision made by the leadership team was unanimous and unequivocal. The purpose of this meeting is to address a formal concern that was raised regarding the integrity of that process and to ensure we maintain full transparency for all parties involved." She looked directly at me. "Chloe, I want to start by personally congratulating you. Your performance reviews, your project outcomes, and the feedback from your peers were exceptional. You were, by a significant margin, the most qualified candidate." A wave of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy washed over me. By a significant margin, unanimous, unequivocal. I shot a look at Liam, whose expression was unreadable. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at Sarah Chen, his jaw tight. "Then, what is this about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The internal queries. I thought people were just gossiping." Sarah folded her hands on the polished surface of the table. "The query was not internal, Chloe. It did not come from a coworker or anyone within your department. The concern was raised externally, in a formal capacity." My mind raced. Externally? Who? A former employee? A client? It made no sense. Ms. Albright shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Liam just kept staring at Sarah, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of the table. "An email was sent directly to our company's CEO," Sarah continued, her professional mask never slipping. "It was then forwarded to my department for a full review. The email expressed concern over a potential conflict of interest, given that the two final candidates were siblings. It suggested that the final decision might have been influenced not by merit, but by a desire to, and I'm quoting here, throw a bone to the sibling who was struggling to keep up in their career." The room tilted. The air was sucked from my lungs. Struggling to keep up. Those words. I knew those words. I had heard them whispered at family holidays, at birthday dinners, cloaked in fake concern. It was the narrative of my life, the story my parents told themselves and everyone else to explain the difference between their two children. "Who?" I choked out, my eyes stinging with tears of pure, unadulterated rage. Who would say that? Sarah Chen's gaze was steady, almost pitying. She reached for a single sheet of paper that was lying face down in front of her. She turned it over and slid it across the polished table. It stopped directly in front of me. It was a printout of an email. My eyes flew to the top, to the from field. The blood drained from my face, and the world went silent save for a roar in my ears. The name and email address, printed in stark black ink, were instantly recognizable. It was my father's. The name on the page seemed to burn itself into my retinas. Robert Miller, Strathmore Consulting, Com. My father, my own father, had written this. The words on the page swam before my eyes, a toxic soup of corporate jargon and thinly veiled insults. I read phrases like perceived nepotism, maintaining family harmony, and ensuring the less naturally gifted child feels valued. He hadn't just called me lucky, he had actively intervened, painting me as a charity case to the CEO of my company, framing my promotion as an act of pity. The lucky break text wasn't a careless comment, it was a confession. A strangled sound escaped my throat, a mix of a laugh and a sob. I looked up from the paper, my vision blurred with unshed tears, and my gaze locked with Liam's. For the first time, the cool, confident mask was gone. His face was a canvas of shock and a dawning, horrified understanding. He looked as poleaxed as I felt. He hadn't known. Of course he hadn't. This wasn't his brand of cruelty, it was our parents'. Subtle, insidious, and always, always framed as being for our own good. I don't understand, I stammered, looking at Sarah Chen, then at Ms. Albright. My manager looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Why would he do this? Sarah's expression softened with something that looked like genuine compassion. Chloe, the email is unusual. It seems to have been written under the guise of professional concern, a senior executive in a related field offering unsolicited advice. However, the subtext is clear. It alleges that your promotion was not earned. She paused, letting the weight of the word hang in the air, which is why we are having this meeting. Because that allegation is baseless, and we felt you and Liam deserved to have the full picture. She then turned to a manila folder on her desk, the kind that held secrets and career-ending documents. She opened it with a quiet rustle of paper. Our selection process is data-driven. We use a scoring matrix that weighs performance reviews, project completion rates, 360-degree feedback, and a final interview panel score. It's designed to be as objective as possible, precisely to avoid situations like this. She slid another sheet of paper out of the folder. This one was a spreadsheet, a grid of names, numbers, and categories. My name was at the top, highlighted in green. Liam's was just below it, highlighted in yellow. The other candidates were listed below them. As you can see, Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional again, the scores are not particularly close. In the category of project management and execution, based on the successful turnaround of the Q3 initiative, you scored a 9.8 out of 10. Liam, your score was 8.2. I stared at the numbers. 9.8. I knew I had worked hard on that project, but I had never seen my efforts quantified like that. It was real, tangible. In peer and subordinate feedback, she continued, Chloe received an average score of 9.5 for leadership and collaboration. Liam, your score was an 8.9. Excellent, but again, a clear difference. She went on, category by category. My scores were consistently higher, not by a hair, not by a rounding error, but by a significant, undeniable margin. The final interview scores were the closest, but even there I had edged him out. The final weighted score at the bottom of the page told the whole story. I was at 94.7. Liam was at 86.3. The silence in the room was deafening. The numbers on that page were a silent, screaming refutation of every doubt I'd ever had, every backhanded compliment, every lucky break that had been thrown my way. This wasn't luck. It was a demolition. Liam finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Can I see that? He asked, pointing to the email from our father. Sarah nodded and pushed it towards him. He read it, his face growing paler with every line. When he finished, he dropped the paper on the table as if it were contaminated. He scrubbed a hand over his face, his confident big brother persona completely stripped away. I am so sorry, Chloe, he whispered, looking at me. His eyes filled with a shame that was so profound, it was almost painful to witness. I had no idea. I swear to you, I had no idea. It's not your fault, I said, my voice hollow. It's not you. Sarah cleared her throat, bringing us back to the sterile reality of her office. The reason we felt it was imperative to share this data with you both is to be unequivocally clear. Chloe, you earned this promotion. It was not a lucky break. It was not a pity prize, and it was not a close call. You were the best candidate, period. We are officially closing this inquiry. The file will be sealed and a note will be added to your father's professional contact record within our system, flagging him as a non-reliable source. She looked at me. Unless you wish for us to take further action? Further action. What would that even look like? Send a cease and desist letter to my own father? I just shook my head, unable to speak. All I wanted was to get out of that glass box, to go somewhere I could breathe. Okay, Sarah said, closing the folder with a decisive snap. Then as far as this company is concerned, the matter is closed. Congratulations again, Chloe. And Liam, we look forward to your continued great work. It was a dismissal. The meeting was over. Liam and I walked out of her office in a stunned silence. We didn't stop in the hallway. We walked straight to the elevator, the invisible eyes of the office still on us. The ride down was silent, the hum of the elevator filling the suffocating space between us. When the doors opened onto our floor, Liam reached out and gently touched my arm. "Don't go back to your desk," he said softly. "Let's go. We're getting out of here." We took the rest of the day off. We ended up at a quiet, dark bar downtown, the kind of place you go to disappear. We sat in a booth and ordered drinks we didn't touch. For a long time, we just sat there. The file from Sarah's office, a phantom presence on the table between us. The numbers, the scores, the email from our father. All this time, I finally said, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. All this time, I thought I was just not as good as you. I thought I had to try harder because I was starting from so far behind. "No," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "Chloe, you were never behind. They just made you carry weights." He finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my brother's eyes before. True, unfiltered guilt. And I let them. I liked being the golden one. It was easier. I never stopped to think about what that made you. The dam broke. The tears I had been holding back since I first read that email finally came, hot and furious. It wasn't just sadness, it was rage. Rage for the little girl who was always told to try harder, for the teenager whose A- was met with a sigh while her brother's B+ was celebrated. Rage for the young woman who had internalized the family narrative so deeply that even when she won, she couldn't believe it was real. As my sobs subsided, a cold, hard clarity began to form in the pit of my stomach. Liam seemed to sense the shift. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady now. I scrolled to our family group chat. "I'm ending it," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm not playing their game anymore." I typed out a message, my thumbs moving with a speed and certainty I didn't know I possessed. "Mom, Dad, I need you both to meet me at your house tonight at 7 p.m. Do not be late. We have something we need to discuss." I hit send. Then I pulled up the HR file that Sarah had, as a courtesy, emailed me a password-protected copy of for my personal records. I attached it to a new email. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a terrifying, exhilarating sense of purpose. "What are you doing?" Liam asked, leaning forward, his eyes wide as he saw the attachment name on my screen. "Chloe, what are you sending?" I looked him straight in the eye, my finger hovering over the send button. "The truth," I said. My gaze dropped to the to field. I had typed in only 2 email addresses, my mother's and my father's. A thought, cold and sharp as an icicle, pierced through my anger. What if they weren't the only ones who believed the lie? What if the narrative had spread further, to the people whose opinions they valued most? My aunts, my uncles, my proud grandparents who doted on their brilliant grandson. A new, bolder plan began to form, a way to not just end the game, but to burn the entire stadium to the ground. My finger paused over the send button. Sending it just to my parents felt too small, too contained. It would become another private family drama, another secret to be swept under the rug. They would apologize. They would explain it away as a misunderstanding, a misguided attempt to protect me. And in a few months, the old dynamics would creep back in, familiar and suffocating. The story they had told about me, the struggling one, the lucky one, wouldn't just be a family secret, it was their public narrative. They had broadcast it to our entire extended family for years. If I was going to fight this, I couldn't just win a private battle. I had to win the war for my own identity. "Wait," I breathed, my mind racing. Liam watched me, a mixture of fear and fascination on his face. "This isn't enough." I deleted my parents' email addresses from the to field. My hands moved deliberately as I began to type, pulling addresses from memory, from old holiday email chains, from the digital Rolodex in my mind. Aunt Carol, Uncle Steve, Grandma Miller, Grandpa Joe. The list grew. I added my mother's sister, my father's brother, my 2 cousins, who always looked at me with a sort of gentle pity. I was methodically assembling the entire jury of my peers, the audience that had been watching the long-running play of The Miller Children, where Liam was the star and I was the supporting cast. "Chloe, what are you doing?" Liam's voice was a low warning. This is a nuclear option. You can't undo this." "I know," I said, and the calmness in my own voice surprised me. "That's the point. They built this narrative in public. I'm going to dismantle it in public." I drafted a short, brutally simple message to accompany the file. Subject: an important clarification regarding my career. Dear family, it has come to my attention that there has been some significant misinformation circulating regarding my recent promotion at work, specifically the idea that it was a lucky break or an unearned gesture of pity. Attached, you will find a file from my company's Human Resources Department. It contains the official data-driven scoring matrix that was used to select the new senior project lead. It was released to me and Liam to clear up a formal external inquiry that was made into the integrity of the promotion process. I believe the data speaks for itself. I am not sending this out of malice. I am sending it because I will no longer allow my hard work and achievements to be dismissed or reframed. I am not lucky. I am capable. I will be at Mom and Dad's house tonight at 7 p.m. to discuss this. I expect them to be ready to explain the source of this external inquiry. Sincerely, Chloe. I reread it once. It was cold, professional, and utterly damning. I attached the password-protected file, and in the body of the email I included the simple password, unlucky. Liam read the email over my shoulder, his breath hitching. "Chloe." "They need to see," I said, my voice hardening. "They all need to see the truth in black and white, with no room for interpretation. No more, 'Oh, you know your father, he just worries.' No more, 'Your mother just wants the best for you.' This," I tapped the screen, "is a receipt. It's proof of what they did and proof of what I did." Without another moment of hesitation, I hit send. The small swoosh sound from my phone's speaker felt like the firing of a cannon, a declaration of war. My phone immediately began to buzz, a frantic, angry vibration against the scarred wood of the bar table. Aunt Carol, Grandma Miller, Uncle Steve. The calls were already starting. I silenced my phone and pushed it to the side. "They're going to lose their minds," Liam said, staring at my phone as if it were a live grenade. "Good," I replied, taking a long sip of my now warm gin and tonic. The alcohol did nothing to numb the feeling in my chest. Instead, it seemed to sharpen it, honing my anger into a fine, dangerous point. Maybe for the first time, they'll actually listen. The drive to my parents' house was the longest 45 minutes of my life. Liam drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He didn't say much, just kept shooting me worried glances. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as we pulled onto their manicured suburban street. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. The perfectly trimmed hedges, the gleaming windows, the cheerful yellow door. It looked like the home of a happy family, a carefully constructed facade I was about to sledgehammer into oblivion. We walked up the path, and I used my key to open the door before they could. I wanted to be the one in control. They were in the living room, waiting. My mother was pacing, her face pale and pinched. My father was sitting in his favorite leather armchair, trying to project an aura of calm authority, but the frantic tapping of his fingers on the armrest gave him away. The air in the room was thick with unspoken accusations. "What is the meaning of this, Chloe?" my father began, his voice a low rumble. "Airing our family business to everyone? Humiliating your mother and me." "Humiliating you?" I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "You want to talk about humiliation? Let's talk about you emailing the CEO of my company to tell him I'm an incompetent charity case. Let's talk about that." My mother gasped, putting a hand to her chest. "Robert, what is she talking about?" she asked, turning to my father. My dad's face went rigid. "I was trying to protect the family. I was concerned about the appearance of favoritism. I wanted to ensure the process was fair to both of our children." "Fair?" I shot back, taking a step forward, my voice rising. "You didn't ask for fairness. You implied I was a failure who needed a handout. You told them I was struggling to keep up. Your words, Dad." "It was a private, professional correspondence," he thundered, rising from his chair. "You had no right to see that, let alone send it to the entire family. And you had no right to interfere in my career," I screamed back, the years of repressed anger finally boiling over. "You have never once, not once, believed in me. It was always Liam, the brilliant one, the natural. I was just the one who tried hard. Well, guess what? Trying hard works. Look at the numbers, Dad. Or did you not bother opening the file? I didn't just win, I crushed him. And it's been like this my whole life, hasn't it? I've been running this race with weights on my ankles that you and Mom tied there, and I still won." I turned to my mother, who was now weeping silently. "And you just stood by and let him do it. The good for yous, the thumbs up emojis. Is that all my success is worth to you? A damn emoji?" "We love you both equally," she sobbed. Liam has always needed more praise. You've always been so strong, so self-sufficient." It was the oldest, most insidious excuse in the book, the one they had used my entire life to justify their neglect. Because I didn't crumble, because I kept going, they assumed I didn't need their support. They mistook my resilience for a lack of need. The doorbell rang, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the tension. My mom looked towards the door in a panic. "Who is that?" "That would be the family you were so worried about me humiliating," I said coldly. "Looks like they want to weigh in." My dad's face went ashen. He knew as well as I did who would be on the other side of that door. His brother, Steve, and my mom's sister, Carol. The two loudest, most gossip-loving branches of our family tree. The ones my parents cared most about impressing. Liam, who had been standing silently by the doorway, a ghost in our family drama, finally moved. He walked to the door and opened it. And there they were, my aunt and uncle, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern, phones in their hands. "What on earth is going on?" Aunt Carol demanded, looking from my parents' distraught faces to my own cold fury. "We got this email from Chloe." Her voice trailed off as she took in the scene. My father looked trapped. His carefully curated image as the proud, successful patriarch was crumbling around him in real time. He opened his mouth to speak, to spin some story, to regain control of the narrative. But before he could utter a single word, my phone, which I'd placed on the coffee table, buzzed again. It wasn't a call or a text. It was a new email notification. My eyes darted to the screen. The sender's name made my stomach plummet. Sarah Chen, Director of Human Resources. The subject line was a single terrifying word: urgent. A cold dread washed over me, instantly extinguishing the fire of my anger. Urgent. The word pulsed on my phone screen, a digital beacon of doom. HR directors don't send urgent emails at 7:30 p.m. on a Wednesday unless something is catastrophically wrong. My mind scrambled, trying to imagine what it could be. Had I broken some confidentiality clause by sharing the file? Was I being fired for airing company business? My own grand public gesture of defiance was suddenly turning on me. "What is it?" Liam asked, his voice low, noticing the sudden shift in my demeanor. I couldn't speak. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers feeling clumsy and numb. My family's squabbling faded into a muffled background roar. My father was trying to placate my aunt and uncle. My mother was still weeping, but all of it seemed a million miles away. There was only the phone, the email, and the sick, twisting feeling in my gut. I tapped it open. The message was short, and every word felt like a punch to the stomach. Subject: urgent. Chloe. I apologize for the late hour, but a serious matter has just been brought to my attention. Following our meeting today, Liam submitted his formal resignation, effective immediately. In his exit letter, he has cited the toxic and untenable family dynamics brought to light by the promotion process as his primary reason for leaving. He specifically mentioned the external interference from your father. Given the circumstances and the potential for this to escalate into a larger issue, our legal team has been engaged. They have requested an immediate hold on your promotion. Your transition to the senior project lead role is suspended pending a full internal review of the situation. Please do not come into the office tomorrow. I will contact you in the morning to schedule a mandatory meeting with myself and legal counsel. Please be prepared to discuss the dissemination of the HR document you were provided. Regards, Sarah Chen. The phone slipped from my grasp and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Liam resigned. My promotion was suspended. Legal was involved. In one fell swoop, I had lost everything. The victory, the validation, the job I had fought so hard for, it was all gone. And worse, it was my brother's sacrifice, his grand gesture of falling on his sword, that had ultimately been the instrument of my downfall. Chloe? Liam's voice was sharp with concern. He stepped forward away from the chaos at the door and saw my face. He knew. What did she say? I just shook my head, unable to form the words. I bent down, picked up the phone, and handed it to him. His eyes scanned the email, and I watched as the color drained from his face. He looked up at me, his expression a mixture of devastation and disbelief. "No," he whispered. "No, this is not what I wanted. I thought if I removed myself from the equation, they would have no choice but to leave you alone, to see you for what you are. I was trying to help." "You resigned?" The words came out in a choked whisper. "Liam, why would you do that?" "Because it was the only way I could think of to make it stop," he said, his voice cracking, frustration and anguish warring in his eyes. "To prove to them, to everyone, that this was never a competition for me, to give you the space you deserved. I told Sarah you were the best candidate. I thought it would be a clear message. But it wasn't. To the soulless, risk-averse machinery of a corporation, it was a red flag. A massive, screaming, litigation-scented red flag. One sibling gets promoted over the other, the father of both complains to the CEO, and then the losing sibling immediately resigns, citing toxic family dynamics. It looked like a constructive dismissal lawsuit waiting to happen. It looked like a family imploding and taking the company down with it. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. And my promotion was the sacrifice. The conversation in the living room had died down. Everyone was staring at us, at the phone in Liam's hand, at my ashen face. "What's happened?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. Liam looked from the phone to our father, and a new kind of anger, cold and lethal, entered his eyes. "He did this," Liam said, his voice dangerously low as he took a step towards our dad. Your meddling, your obsessive need to control the narrative, to cast us in your little play. It's not enough that you poisoned our childhoods, you had to poison our careers too." He held up the phone. "I quit my job today, Dad. I quit because I couldn't stand to be in the same building anymore, knowing what you did to Chloe. And because I quit, the company got scared. They've suspended Chloe's promotion. Legal is involved now. Is this what you wanted? Is this protecting the family?" My father stared at him, speechless. For the first time in my life, I saw him look truly lost, completely stripped of his blustering authority. He looked old and small in his ridiculous leather armchair. My Aunt Carol gasped, finally understanding the magnitude of the situation. "Robert, you emailed his work?" she squawked, turning on her brother. "What were you thinking?" My father stammered, looking around the room for an ally, for someone to validate him. But there was no one. My mother was staring at the floor. My uncle was shaking his head in disbelief. And Liam and I were looking at him with the shared, unified contempt of two children who had finally seen the wizard behind the curtain. "You destroyed her career," Liam said, his voice flat and dead. "And for what? Your ego? Your pride?" I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie of someone else's life. The job was gone. My brother's job was gone. My family was in ruins, all the ugly secrets laid bare under the harsh living room lights. And in the middle of it all, I felt a sudden bizarre sense of freedom. The worst had happened. The fear I had lived with my entire life, the fear of not being good enough, of failing in their eyes, was meaningless now. I had succeeded, and they had torn me down anyway. It was never about me. It was about them. I picked my purse up from the floor where I'd dropped it. "I'm leaving," I announced to the silent room. My voice was eerily steady. "Chloe, wait," my mother pleaded. "We can fix this." "No, you can't," I said, turning to face her. "There's nothing left to fix." I looked at my father, then at Liam, then at the shocked faces of my aunt and uncle. This family is broken. It has been for a long time. I just didn't see it until today. I walked toward the door. Liam moved to follow me. "Where are you going?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Away from here." I walked out the cheerful yellow door and into the cool night air. The manicured suburban street was quiet and peaceful, a stark contrast to the emotional wreckage I'd left behind me. I could hear Liam's footsteps behind me, and then my father's voice, shouting my name from the doorway. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. I reached my car, parked down the street, and leaned against the cold metal, taking a deep, ragged breath. Liam caught up to me, his face etched with worry. "Chloe, please, let's just go somewhere and talk. We can figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out," I said, my voice hollow. "It's done." My phone buzzed in my hand, another email. I almost ignored it, but morbid curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't from Sarah Chen. It wasn't from anyone in my family. The sender's address was one I didn't recognize, a generic Gmail account. But the name attached to it made my blood freeze. It was the name of the CEO, the man my father had emailed, Michael Vance. The subject line read, "Your father's email." My heart hammered against my ribs. Why was the CEO of the company emailing me directly from a personal account in the middle of the night? With trembling hands, I opened it. The message was just 2 lines long, but it changed everything again. Ms. Miller, I'm not sure if you're aware, but your father and I are not just professional acquaintances. We are old college roommates. There's something you need to know about the email he sent me, and more importantly, about the one I sent back. Old college roommates. The words hung in the cool night air, twisting everything I thought I understood into a grotesque new shape. This wasn't a professional cold call from a concerned executive. This was personal. This was my father leveraging a decades-old friendship to interfere in my life. The betrayal deepened, sinking to a new, previously unimaginable level. "What is it?" Liam asked, leaning closer, trying to read the screen. I held the phone up for him to see. He read the 2 lines and let out a low whistle. "Of course," he breathed, a bitter, cynical edge to his voice. Of course, they were roommates. The old boys' network strikes again. My mind was reeling. What could the CEO, Michael Vance, have possibly sent back to my father? A polite brush-off? An assurance he'd look into it? Or something else entirely? My fingers trembled as I realized there was a small paperclip icon at the bottom of the email, an attachment. It was a forwarded message, the original email chain. Swallowing hard, I tapped it open. The screen refreshed, and the first thing I saw was my father's original, obsequious email. Reading it again, knowing now the depth of the connection between the two men, made it even more nauseating. He called Michael Mikey, a detail so cringeworthy I felt a flush of second-hand embarrassment. He'd couched his concerns in faux humble language, framing it as a father's worry, asking his old friend for a little guidance. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive manipulation. But then I scrolled down and my breath caught in my chest. There, beneath my father's sycophantic drivel, was the reply from Michael Vance, sent only an hour after he'd received my dad's message, a full week before my promotion was even announced. It was not what I expected. Subject re: a small confidential matter. Rob. It's been a while. I'm going to be blunt because we're too old to dance around things. This email is wildly inappropriate and frankly insulting to both of your children and to my company's integrity. Chloe Miller is a rock star. I've seen her file. I was on the final approval panel for this promotion. She didn't just earn this role. She's been outperforming it for the last 6 months. The Q3 project she salvaged single-handedly saved our company from losing the Henderson account, a fact you seem conveniently unaware of. That account is worth over $10 million a year, Rob. Her promotion isn't a bone we're throwing her. It's a long overdue reward for excellence and a strategic move to retain top talent. As for Liam, he's a solid employee. Good, not great. He's exactly where he should be in his career. The idea that Chloe is struggling to keep up with him is, based on every single metric we have, laughable. If anything, the reverse is true. I'm not going to pretend I don't remember how you two were as kids. Liam was always the charming one you paraded around, while Chloe was the quiet, diligent one you overlooked. It seems some things never change. But this isn't your living room, and I'm not one of your golf buddies you can spin yarns to. This is my company, and here, merit is the only thing that matters. Do not ever contact me about my employees again. And for God's sake, Rob, start seeing the daughter you actually have, not the one you've invented in your head. She's running circles around all of you. Mike. I read it twice, then a third time, the words blurring through a fresh wave of tears. But these weren't tears of anger or sadness. They were tears of pure, shocking validation. Someone saw me. Someone powerful, someone objective, someone who wasn't blinded by family history, saw me. Not just saw me, but championed me. Michael Vance, the CEO, thought I was a rock star. He had defended me. He had put my father squarely in his place with a level of clarity and ferocity I had never dared to use myself. Chloe, Liam whispered, reading over my shoulder. Wow. The pieces were clicking into place with sickening speed. My father received this email a week ago. He knew. He knew I had earned the promotion. He knew the CEO thought I was a star and that Liam was just solid. He knew his entire narrative was a lie, not just in my eyes, but in the eyes of his old college roommate. And what did he do? He doubled down. He couldn't admit he was wrong. He couldn't accept a world where I was more successful than Liam. So when I got the promotion, he sent me that text. Lucky break, kiddo. It wasn't a confession. It was a pathetic last-ditch attempt to maintain his own flawed worldview, to convince himself and me that the CEO's brutal takedown was wrong, and his own narrative was right. It also explained the HR meeting, Sarah Chen's external inquiry. Wasn't my father's email. It was the CEO's furious response to it. He must have forwarded the entire chain to HR, ordering them to make sure the process was bulletproof and to get ahead of any potential fallout from my father's meddling. The meeting wasn't to question my promotion, it was to protect it. And we, Liam and I, had completely misunderstood. In our pain, we reacted to the old family script. I had reacted with rage and scorched earth tactics. Liam had reacted with self-sacrifice. We had both, in our own ways, escalated the situation into a 5-alarm corporate fire, confirming every stereotype about messy family dynamics. We had snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Legal isn't involved because of Dad's email, I said, the realization dawning on me. They're involved because Liam resigned and I sent that file to the whole family. We made it a problem. I have to fix this, Liam said, pulling out his own phone. I'm calling Sarah. I'm unresigning. I'll tell her it was a rash decision. No, wait, I said, grabbing his arm. A new plan, clear and audacious, was forming in my mind. Calling Sarah won't be enough. The damage is done. The only person who can fix this now is the person who started it. I looked up from the glowing screen of my phone to the house, where the lights in the living room cast dramatic shadows on the lawn. My father was still visible, pacing behind the window. What are you thinking? Liam asked, his eyes following my gaze. I'm thinking our old college roommate, Michael Vance, just gave me all the ammunition I need, I said, a cold, hard smile touching my lips for the first time all day. Dad's terrified of looking weak or foolish in front of his friends, right? Especially his powerful CEO friend? Liam nodded slowly. It's his kryptonite. Exactly, I said, my voice filled with a newfound confidence. So we're going back in there, and we're not just going to talk. We're going to give him a choice. I forwarded the email from Michael Vance to Liam. He can either call Michael Vance, his old buddy Mikey, right now, tonight, in front of the entire family, and explain exactly what he's done. He'll have to confess that his interference and lies have caused one of his children to quit a good job and the other to have a promotion suspended. He'll have to eat every ounce of crow there is to eat. Or what? Liam prompted, his eyes wide. I took a deep breath. Or I call Michael Vance myself. I'll explain that Liam quit under duress due to our father's harassment, that I was forced to disseminate the HR file to my family to protect my professional reputation from our father's slander. I will use every corporate buzzword I know: hostile environment, third-party interference, potential for litigation. I will turn this family drama into a corporate nightmare that legal will be untangling for months, and I will make sure he, our father, is named as the root cause of all of it. I'll burn his professional reputation to the ground, just like he tried to do to mine. Liam stared at me, a slow, grudging smile spreading across his face. That's brutal, he said. It's perfect. We turned and started walking back towards the cheerful yellow door. Each step felt heavier, more deliberate than the last. This was it. The final confrontation, not a shouting match fueled by years of resentment, but a calculated strategic maneuver. I felt no fear, only a chilling, absolute certainty. The game had changed. I wasn't the struggling, lucky one anymore. I was the one holding all the cards. We reached the door, and I pushed it open without knocking, striding back into the silent, tense living room where my entire family was still frozen in a tableau of misery. My father looked up, his face a mixture of relief and apprehension. Chloe, thank God you came back. We need to talk this through. You're right, I said, my voice ringing with a power that made him flinch. We do, but we're not going to be the only ones talking. I held up my phone, the screen still illuminated with the CEO's scathing email. You have one phone call to make, Dad, and you're going to make it on speakerphone right now in front of everyone. My father stared at my phone as if it were a venomous snake. His bravado, already cracked and peeling, shattered completely. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a pasty gray mask of fear. He knew. He didn't have to read the screen to know what I was holding. The mention of a phone call, of making it in front of everyone, was enough. He knew I had found the one weapon against which he had no defense, public humiliation in front of a man whose respect he desperately craved. What are you talking about? He blustered, but his voice was thin, reedy. It lacked all of its earlier thunder. I'm not calling anyone. Oh, you are, I said, my voice dangerously soft. I took a step closer, into the center of the room, so I was standing between him and my aunt and uncle. They were watching the exchange with wide, unblinking eyes, like spectators at a tennis match. You are going to call your old college roommate Mikey, and you are going to explain to him, word for word, how your little professional inquiry blew up in your face. You're going to tell him your son quit his job and your daughter's promotion is on hold. You're going to tell him it's all your fault. And then, I let the pause hang in the air, thick and heavy. You are going to beg him to fix it. A strangled gasp came from my mother. Chloe, you can't ask him to do that. The embarrassment. Embarrassment? I wheeled on her, my voice like ice. You want to talk about embarrassment? For 3 years, I have walked into that office every single day and worked my tail off, wondering if I was good enough. I have sat in meetings with my own brother, feeling like an imposter. I have listened to you two sing his praises while you patted me on the head for trying hard. My entire professional life has been one long, drawn-out humiliation, orchestrated by you. So, no, I don't give a damn about his embarrassment. It's a debt, and it's long past due. I turned my attention back to my father. That's option 1, I said, my tone shifting back to one of cold, business-like precision. Option 2 is that I call him myself, but my conversation will be very different. It will be with Michael Vance, CEO, not Mikey, the old roommate, and I will inform him that I am considering my legal options regarding a hostile work environment created by the actions of his personal friend, your husband. I will talk about reputational damage. I will talk about targeted harassment. I will make this so messy and so expensive that his board of directors will want your head on a platter. So you choose a few minutes of deep, personal shame or a professional firestorm you will never recover from? Silence. The only sound in the room was the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, each tick marking a second of my father's rapidly dissolving authority. Liam stood by my side, a silent, unshakable pillar of support. He didn't need to say a word. His presence alone was a statement. We were a united front. The golden child and the scapegoat, finally on the same team. My father looked around the room, his eyes pleading. He looked at my mother, who just wrung her hands and looked away. He looked at his brother, my Uncle Steve, who simply raised his eyebrows and gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head, a clear signal that he wasn't riding to the rescue. My father was utterly, completely alone, trapped in a corner of his own making. With a defeated sigh that seemed to drain the very life from his body, he slumped back into his armchair. "Give me the phone," he mumbled, his voice a hoarse whisper. He held out a trembling hand. I didn't give him my phone. "Use your own," I said, "on speaker." He fumbled in his pocket, his movements clumsy. He pulled out his phone, his thumb shaking as he navigated to his contacts. He found the name, Michael Vance, and hesitated for a long moment. He looked up at me one last time, a final desperate appeal in his eyes. I met his gaze and held it, my expression unyielding. There would be no reprieve. He pressed the call button and then the speaker icon. The tinny sound of the phone ringing filled the suffocating silence of the room. It rang once, twice. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if he didn't answer? Then a click, and a voice crisp, powerful, and utterly impatient filled the room. "Rob, what is it? I'm in the middle of dinner." My father swallowed hard. "Mikey," he croaked. I'm sorry to bother you. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. My help? Michael Vance's voice was laced with suspicion. "After the email I sent you last week, I'm surprised you still have my number. What could you possibly need?" This was it, the moment of reckoning. My father closed his eyes as if he couldn't bear to witness his own humiliation. "It's about the kids," he stammered, his voice cracking. "About Chloe and Liam. I've made a terrible mistake, Mike. A real mess." And then he told him, haltingly, shamefully, with the entire family listening in rapt silence. my father confessed everything. He told him about my promotion, about his lucky break text, about the family confrontation. He told him that Liam had resigned and that my promotion had been suspended by HR and legal. With every word, he seemed to shrink, collapsing in on himself in his big leather chair until he was just a sad old man who had been caught in a web of his own lies. When he finally finished, the silence on the other end of the line was long and heavy. I could picture the CEO on the other end, sitting at a fancy restaurant pinching the bridge of his nose in sheer disbelief. "Let me get this straight," Michael Vance finally said, his voice dangerously calm. "You ignored my email. You continued to undermine your daughter, and your actions have now directly resulted in me losing one high-performing employee and having the promotion of another, a top-tier talent I specifically wanted in that role, suspended by my own legal department?" "Yes," my father whispered. The word was barely audible. "Unbelievable," Vance breathed. "Truly, Robert, you have a gift, a genius for self-destruction." Another pause. "Put your daughter on the phone." My father looked at me, his eyes wide, and held the phone out. I took it, my hand steady. "Hello, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice clear and strong. "This is Chloe Miller." "Chloe," he said, and the impatience in his voice was gone, replaced by a weary sort of respect. "First, I am personally, deeply sorry for the mess your father has created. What he did was reprehensible. Second, I am rescinding HR's suspension of your promotion, effective immediately. Consider it a direct order from me. I'll call Sarah Chen myself and clear it up. You start your new role tomorrow morning. Is that clear?" "Yes," I said, a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees, washing over me. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, you earned it. Now, about your brother. Is he there?" "Yes, he's right here." I handed the phone to Liam. "Liam," the CEO's voice boomed from the speaker. "I have your resignation letter on my desk. Your manager is devastated. I'm telling you right now, I'm not accepting it. You are a valuable employee, and I'm not losing you because of this circus. You show up for work tomorrow. We'll assign you to a different division, give you a fresh start away from all this. We'll make it work, but you are not quitting. End of story." Liam was stunned into silence for a moment. Yes, sir," he finally managed to say. "Thank you, sir." "Good," Vance grunted. "Now put your father back on." Liam handed the phone back to our dad, who took it like it was a death sentence. "Rob," Michael Vance said, and his voice had dropped to a low, menacing growl that sent a shiver down my spine. "You and I are done. The friendship, the history, all of it. It's over. If you ever contact anyone at my company or interfere in your children's careers in any way again, I will personally make it my mission to ruin you. I will call every client, every contact you have, and I will tell them this story. Am I making myself absolutely clear?" "Yes, Michael," my father whispered, his voice broken. "Crystal clear." "Good." The line went dead. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a battlefield after the final shot has been fired. My father sat motionless, staring at his dark phone screen. My mother was openly weeping into a handkerchief. My aunt and uncle looked like they had just witnessed a public execution and didn't know whether to be horrified or thrilled. And me? I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, just a vast, empty quiet where my family used to be. I had won. I had gotten everything I wanted. My job, my brother's job, a public apology, a decisive and final victory. But in the process, I had blown my entire world apart. I looked at the broken man in the chair and the weeping woman on the sofa, and I felt nothing but a profound and desolate sense of pity. I turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, and didn't look back. This time, Liam didn't follow. He knew I needed to be alone. I got in my car and just started driving with no destination in mind. About an hour later, sitting in a deserted parking lot overlooking the city lights, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Michael Vance's personal assistant. He asked me to send you this. He believes it might provide some necessary context for your father's behavior." Below the text was a single attachment, a scanned yellowed newspaper clipping from 1988. I downloaded it, my curiosity piqued. It was a short article from a local paper's business section. The headline read, "Strathmore Consulting announces new junior partners." I scanned the text. It mentioned the two young men who were being promoted from senior analyst positions. The first name was Michael Vance. The second name was Robert Miller, my father. They had started at the same time, on the same level. A grainy photo showed two smiling young men in ill-fitting suits, shaking hands. My father and the man who would become his CEO, once equals, standing at the very beginning of two very different paths. The grainy black and white photograph was a ghost from a past I never knew existed. Two young men full of ambition, standing shoulder to shoulder. My father and Michael Vance, equals, partners, friends. And in that single yellowed clipping, the entire twisted narrative of my life snapped into focus. It was never about me and Liam. Not really. It was a phantom competition, a shadow war my father had been waging for 30 years against the ghost of his own perceived failure. Michael Vance had soared, becoming a titan of industry, a CEO whose name carried weight. My father had plateaued. He'd had a respectable, comfortable career, but he'd never reached the stratosphere. He wasn't Michael Vance, and he couldn't bear it. So he had created a world he could control, a miniature corporate ladder in his own home. He had cast his children in the roles he and his old friend once played. Liam was his Michael Vance charming, effortless, destined for greatness. And I was him, the grinder, the one who had to work harder. The one who, in his mind, would always fall short. He wasn't just undermining my success, he was retroactively justifying his own life story. If I couldn't beat my Michael Vance, then how could he have been expected to beat his? The realization didn't bring anger, just a profound, hollow sadness. I finally understood the source of the poison, but the knowledge didn't make it any less toxic. I sat in my car for a long time, the city lights blurring into a watercolor painting below. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I drove to a hotel, checked in, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I slept a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head held high. It felt different. The whispers were still there, but their tone had changed. It was no longer the murmur of gossip, but the hushed awe of people who had heard whispers of a corporate legend in the making. Sarah Chen met me at my desk. "Welcome to your new role, Chloe," she said, a small, genuine smile on her face. "Your new office is ready. Michael Vance's office called. He said to tell you, don't let the bastards get you down." The gruff, secondhand encouragement from the CEO felt more validating than 1,000 praises from my own father. My new office had a window. It looked out over the city. It felt like I could finally breathe. The work was challenging and demanding, but for the first time, I felt truly equal to it. The imposter syndrome, the little voice that whispered I was a fraud who'd gotten a lucky break, was silent. It had been replaced by the quiet confidence of the numbers on that HR spreadsheet. 94.7. That was me. Not a story, not a narrative, but a fact. Liam and I met for lunch a few days later. He had been transferred to a new division, and it was like a weight had been lifted from him. "It's weird," he said, stirring his iced tea. "For the first time, I feel like I'm not performing for an audience. I'm just working." We talked for a long time, not as the golden child and the scapegoat, but as two adults, two siblings who were finally free of the roles they had been forced to play. We were just Chloe and Liam. It was a new, fragile beginning. I didn't speak to my parents for 2 months. They called. They texted. They left pleading voicemails. I ignored them all. I needed the space, the silence to build a version of myself that wasn't defined by their expectations or their failures. I needed to know who Chloe Miller was when she wasn't Robert Miller's daughter. Finally, one Saturday, I drove to their house. I didn't call first. I let myself in with my key and found them in the kitchen. They looked older, smaller. The fight had gone out of them. "Chloe," my mother whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm not here to fight," I said, my voice calm and even. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd been told to try harder 1,000 times. "I'm here to set some new terms." I looked at my father. "My career is off limits. You will never again comment on it, interfere with it, or discuss it with anyone. Not me, not Liam, not your friends. As far as you're concerned, I am an accountant in a different city. Understood?" He nodded, his eyes fixed on the table. "Mom," I continued, "I love you, but I am not your emotional support animal. My strength is not an excuse for your neglect. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be a two-way street. You have to see me, the real me, not just the strong one who doesn't need anything." She sobbed, a quiet, broken sound. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. We were so wrong." "I know," I said, and I did. I didn't forgive them, not yet. Forgiveness felt too easy, a cheap grace for a lifetime of damage. But for the first time, I understood them. And in understanding, the last vestiges of my anger finally dissolved, leaving only a quiet resolve. This is how it has to be from now on. These are my boundaries. If you can respect them, we can try to build something new. If you can't, then I'm done. We're done. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. There were no dramatic hugs, no tearful reunions where everything was magically fixed. It was the beginning of a long, slow, and often awkward process of rebuilding. There were stumbles. My father would occasionally start to offer unsolicited advice, and I would have to cut him off with a sharp, "We're not discussing this." My mother would sometimes fall back into her old habit of praising Liam effusively while offering me a simple, "That's nice, dear." Each time, I would gently but firmly correct her, reminding her of the new terms. But slowly, painstakingly, things began to change. They started asking me about my life, my friends, my hobbies, the parts of me that had nothing to do with work or achievement. My father, in a shocking move, took up gardening and started sending me pictures of his prize-winning roses instead of articles about the stock market. My mother started calling just to chat, to tell me a funny story she'd heard. It was a different kind of family, one built not on a crumbling foundation of competition and lies, but on a new, fragile bedrock of respect. About a year later, I received a company-wide email. Michael Vance was retiring. In his farewell address, he talked about the future of the company and the next generation of leaders he had faith in. And then, he mentioned a few names, people who embodied the company's values of merit and integrity. My name was one of them. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. I braced myself, a reflexive flinch against a blow that I slowly realized was no longer coming. I opened it. The message wasn't "lucky break." It wasn't even "good for you." It was a picture of the newspaper clipping from 1988, the one Michael Vance had sent me. Beneath it, my father had typed a single sentence. "He was always the better man, but you, Chloe, are better than both of us. Congratulations. You earned it." And for the first time, reading those words from him, I knew with every fiber of my being that they were true.